Go ahead.
All right, welcome everyone. Before we begin the meeting, we will have a prayer led by Councilman Kimna, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Heavenly Father, we ask your presence to be with us and to lead us this evening. We ask your spirit to guide our lips, our thoughts, our actions, and decisions that face us today, as well as those in our future. We thank you for the blessings that you have given us and the ability to lead others in this community. We ask that your hands be upon all those protecting and serving, and we ask that you keep them safe from harm's way. We ask that you be the center of all we do, and thank you for loving us. We ask this in your name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everyone. I will now call to order the Monday, February 1st, 2021 City Council meeting. Due to COVID-19 social distancing recommendations, our meeting is virtual only. You can view this meeting on the City of Jefferson's Facebook page, or to join virtually, you can click the link that is found on the Jefferson City's website, which is jeffersoncitymo.gov. Call-in participation is available at the phone number 404-397-1516. The meeting number is 146-514-2185, and the meeting password is 1234. All of that information is on the agenda, which is available on the city's website. Mrs. Donaldson, roll call, please.
Fitzwater.
Present.
Graham.
Here.
Hensley.
Present.
Hussey.
Here.
Kimna.
Here.
Lester.
Here.
Schreiber.
Present.
Vogt.
Here.
Ward. Here. Wiseman.
Present.
Item 3, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Miscellaneous agenda items. Item A, we have a pandemic update, and we have with us Christy Campbell from the Cole County Health Department Director. Welcome, Ms. Campbell. We'd love to have your update. Thank you for being here tonight.
Good evening, and thank you for having me here for this update again. I feel like we've made a lot of progress in the capital city over the past week. Our positive cases numbers continue to be low. Our hospitalizations are very low, and I'm very happy to report that. I'm also very happy to report that we've been able to give a lot of vaccines in Cole County. I was looking on the Most Stops COVID website the Department of Health and Senior Services has, and they've now added a vaccine dashboard. And so as vaccines are given in our city, and they're all entered into the Show Me Vac system, the state system, that dashboard will be updated so you can look by county and see how many vaccines have been given. And so far in Cole County, we're up to almost 8,000 doses. We're at 7,955 doses. So that's awesome to see, especially since we're showing that we have about 7,445 positive cases. So far in the county, we've already given more doses of vaccine than we've recorded positive cases, and I think that's wonderful news to see. We do want to emphasize for everyone that the Department of Health and Senior Services and the governor's office established what phase we're on for those vaccines. So again, at that Most Stops COVID website, you can see that we're still in phase 1A. So that's all the long-term care facilities, workers and staff, healthcare workers, EMTs, EMS, paramedics, that group. We're also in phase 1B, tier 1 and tier 2. So tier 1 is that first responders and emergency workers and public work staff, law enforcement, all those workers. And then tier 2 is those that are age 65 and older, and then those who have those underlying health conditions that are listed on the website. So those are the groups that are eligible to receive vaccine at this time. And if anybody is interested in getting vaccine, we are urging everyone to contact their healthcare worker first. All of the healthcare organizations in Cole County are active doing either vaccines in their clinics or having special mass vaccination clinics. So everyone's busy doing that now. So if you contact your healthcare worker, they'll put you on a list or they'll sign you up for one of their clinics. And if you don't have a regular doctor or primary care physician, that's when you can contact the health department and we'll put you on our list. We're trying to serve those that might not have regular doctors, and we're also helping out some of those groups like law enforcement agencies and other state agencies that and doing special clinics for them. So I did want to let you know that we are having a testing event, or the Community Health Center is having a testing event on Wednesday of this week in partnership with the Department of Health and Senior Services. So if you know anyone who is interested in a free test, they can sign up on the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services website for that test. I think they might be doing that at the American Legion again. And then this Friday is the event where the Missouri National Guard is coming in and helping us do a vaccination event. And we're doing that with our partners here in Cole County. So St. Mary's, Cap Region, Community Health Center, JCMG, everyone is participating in that event with the Cole County Health Department and the National Guard. And we anticipate giving about 2,000 vaccines that day. We had a waiting list at the health department. And we are able to have our partner Central Bank call and make an appointments for us. It is going to be an appointment only event. So there might be a few slots left if you are over 65. We're kind of targeting this event to those over 65 and need a vaccine. You can call the health department and let us know, but most of the appointments have been made. But don't fear, that's probably just going to be the first event of many that will be held to distribute vaccine as soon as the supply is more available. So I'd entertain any questions at this time, or if there's something that you'd like me to cover that I didn't.
Thank you, Mrs. Campbell. Does council have any questions or comments about the pandemic at this time?
Mayor, I just have one question. The state dashboard and the number you cited, is that tracking individuals based on where they live or where the vaccine's administered?
I would anticipate that those are based on where the residents live. Usually all case data or vaccine data is by your county of residence.
Okay.
So, and I know that, yeah, I know at the health department, we're not giving vaccines to just Cole County residents. We've had residents from other counties come in, but I would anticipate that that data is based on your county of residence.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Hussey. Any other questions? And as a reminder, we do still have our city and county advisory, which reminds people to stay home if they're sick and keep their distance, wear their mask if they can't socially distance, try to do their shopping as contactless as possible and keep those safeguards if they're eating at restaurants, spreading out and keeping their distance and avoiding gatherings as much as possible. So we appreciate everyone continuing to take the precautions and that the numbers are going the right direction. Every week we have a meeting with all of our key healthcare officials here in Jefferson City, the hospitals, and with the Cole County Health Department and Community Health Center, SSM, JCMG, and Cap Region. We keep and the city and county, we keep in that constant communication every week. And in addition to that, we also have weekly press briefings. Our next one is this Thursday, February 4th at 10 a.m. And although those are mainly for the press, they are done by WebEx, and the press has been very, we've been fortunate. They've been sharing that information through the news media, but you're also welcome to view that and share that with your constituents. We do take that press briefing every week and put it on the city's City of Jefferson's Facebook page. So you can share it that way. And I believe some of the media outlets put it out as well. If you didn't see the one from last Thursday, I would encourage you to watch it because there was a lot of helpful information about the vaccine, and I know that will be the case again this week. So another way to stay informed as this new information comes out about the pandemic and the vaccine and everything we need to be continuing to do. Any other questions for Christy? Okay, thank you again for always being here and giving us the update. We really appreciate it, and for your work with Cole County Health Department.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. Item B will actually be moved to our next meeting. We have a recognition of the Honorable Brian Stumpy for his years of service for the city. He will be joining us at our next meeting on February 15th. Item 5, we have no public hearings tonight, no appointments by the mayor. So number 7, presentations from staff, consultants, and invited guests. Mr. Marash will give us an update on the Clark and Dunklin intersection.
Thank you. And I'll have here in a second David Bangy. He's helping me from another computer show some diagrams or drawings that we had included in information we sent to the council late last week. But basically, since the meeting last January 4th, I think, is when the council elected not to proceed with the roundabout at Clark and Dunklin. We've been getting a couple new information has come up. And so we wanted to get the council to kind of weigh in and make some decisions on those items. And I outlined those in a memo to y'all. And they're really just 3 points. And real quickly, I'll go through this. But the first point with the Clark and Dunklin, as everybody recalls, we were in a situation where we received a grant called the Governor's Cost Share Grant over a year ago now, I guess. And that basically would have allowed us to build 3 roundabouts, one at each interchange, and one ramp, and one at Clark and Dunklin. And David's got it on the screen there. COVID comes along, and that program got put on hold or basically canceled for Jefferson City. And so since our last meeting, though, January 19th, we got a letter from MoDOT that indicated, hey, that cost share program's now back on, and ask us to respond as to the interest of the city and still pursuing that. And so we kind of put them off a little bit till after this meeting. We said, well, as soon as we can get back, it's February 2nd, give the council a chance to meet and discuss. But really, we're recommending, in light of not wanting to proceed with the other roundabout at Clark and Dunklin, that was kind of our match money. And in addition to that, we were borrowing some money for the MSP redevelopment project to help us fulfill all that grant match to do all 3 of these roundabouts. And so a couple other things that could be problematic with that is that even though it's back on now, really we would have to spend more money in upfront in design. That would be our own money, as well as any other right-of-way just on the edges, kind of corner cuts on the roundabouts out by the highway, and then survive at least probably 2 rounds of budget talks at the state. This is kind of like when we fund a general fund project. Each year it would come up whether the council wanted to put that project back in the budget or not. It's not like a typical capital project. And so we would have to survive 2 rounds of the legislator putting that back in the state budget before we could actually even go to construction. So with all those risks, and in light of the fact it didn't seem, the council at the time, last time, January 4th, didn't want to proceed with the roundabout at Clark and Dunklin, we recommend letting the state know we're no longer interested in participating in that. And I know other cities are kind of in the same boat as us. They kind of switched gears as we did, and are a little gun shy about having to work through 2 state legislator budgets on that. So that's the first point that we'd really like some feedback on. And really, unless there's a affirmative action, yes, we're back in, go forth and do this by the council, we've kind of missed the window to respond anyway, they wanted it by the end of the month. But so really it's kind of a no vote in that regard to MoDOT. And I'll go through all these, then we can ask questions or whatever, if that's okay, or I guess we could ask questions anytime. But and then since we're looking at not proceeding with the larger project there at Dunklin and Clark, we said, okay, we understood there was a notion to do something. And so that really put us into looking at the site distances. And David has a diagram of that on it's attachment B, but has a diagram, all the various site distances you can think of, whether you're at the offset left or if you moved it back up to the intersection. And, you can see why it was so problematic. If you're at the offset left, you have to look through 2 houses and across the parking lot to even get your required sight distances. Really much the same for moving it up to the intersection at where it normally be. So that was the problem. And everybody, I think, identified that, always indicating, well, this was some really strange geometry, not being able to see well and all that. This is just the mathematics of why that is. And sight distances, just for everybody's information, are calculated. They're basically a calculated type thing where we look at the speed of the roadway, how sloped the street is, intersections, intersecting the adjacent street, the main line, things like that, and then calculate those and just draw the lines on the map. And so really you got to get out close to around 400 feet to really meet the sight distance on that type of a roadway. So obviously that didn't meet. So based on that, we said, okay, what options can we do? You could always do nothing, and that is kind of a third option here. But the first option we came up with, and really what we recommended was, if we want to do something in this intersection, go ahead and move the offset left back to the intersection. That's the green sight lines there, and David's got attachment C up and kind of shows you where we're saying this is the speed hump option, where you could slow the traffic down. That shortens your required sight distance because traffic would have to slow there at the hump about 15 miles an hour and then go over that. Obviously, speed humps, people love them or hate them. And so, it could be controversial, obviously, but we felt this was probably the most practical from our standpoint. Slowing the traffic. You would have to take some parking out again at the Joshua House Church parking lot, which the city owns that lot still. And this could be done relatively cheaply. We're saying really under $50,000 is probably quite a bit less than that, because really a speed hump, you might get into 10 to 20 grand of construction, and then some funds to take out the excess pavement thing and straighten out those arrangements and that kind of thing. So that was our recommended one. Then we also looked at a stop sign and the next drawing, attachment D. So we could make this a 4-way stop. It doesn't really meet the 4-way stop criteria from a traffic standpoint, but because of the sight distance, one could do it. We actually had our consultant Bartlett and West give us those, they're called Q links, but what would the traffic backup be in the morning, peak hour, people coming in on Clark, that's shown in red, and then the evening, the yellow one on the opposite way going south. And, we found those to be, kind of a range we try to give, looking at study. But anyway, Bartlett has calculated somewhere the worst one would be coming in the morning between 135, 200 feet, 217 feet on the red line there. So you're starting to approach a backup where people are going to view that as a little bit problematic, more than likely. We'd still need to straighten out the right of way and how the parking works at the intersection. David kind of sketched it in there in purple with this option, but it does take up, the parking spaces are really out where the right of way is and the sidewalk and everything. Certainly this could be done because you can install a stop sign because of the sight distance problem. However, one of the issues we found, obviously you put in more traffic control like this, you probably are going to have some more accidents. And then, there's probably could be a diversion into the neighborhood off towards Lincoln of people just trying to avoid this if they're heading downtown anyway, things of that nature. And that was what got the whole project started anyway, people diverting and going through Lincoln's campus in the morning, things like that. So we're a little hesitant to recommend this option for that reason. But then obviously the last option, do nothing. We don't have a drawing for that, obviously, but the other thing about that is it could be done, certainly, but now that we've studied this intersection essentially to the nth degree now with all the options laid out, if we did end up having a problem, some kind of crash or accident, there could be some additional liability there. But, the city is insured for these things. And I always say that's what we have lawyers for, to protect us on these things. So, so that's kind of where we came out on the low cost options for Clark and Dunklin, short of, the roundabout traffic signal type things that spent considerable funds. third thing that happened, the number 3 thing that I'd like to get some guidance on, it sounds like we're going to pursue either do nothing or one of these low-cost options potentially at the intersection, is to work with Cole County. We got to remember this is city-county money, not just city money. So I'd like to get some direction on what to do with the remaining funds. It's going to be about 1.5 million remaining somewhere, give or take, and decide what to do with those. We're recommending that we go ahead and reassign those, work with Cole County to reassign those to the MSP redevelopment. So one of the other things that's happened, we finally got a letter and were awarded a grant over at MSP, and that partially funded some of our roads that we had committed to the state to build when we got this property as a city. And so the grant really covers the roads in red, which is Chestnut down towards the railroad tracks, the long straight one there in red. And then the one over here, I don't think we called it Street A or something on the diagram, but we're moving the cursor across it, but that's kind of in front of a future, like could be a hotel site or something there by the federal courthouse. And so that's what the grant would really fund. And but the yellow is, in addition, was a road that was committed to be built by the city at the time. We worked with the state. They were really adamant that those 2 roads connect through this development if they were going to give us the properties. And so we didn't have the funds to do that with the grant. It kept getting cut back and cut back and cut back by the feds through their request. And so we really had this hanging commitment. And so if we're not going to pursue a larger project at Clark and Dunklin, I feel it'd be prudent maybe to reassign those funds and work on this roadway all at the same time. We're doing the red roadways to fulfill the grant, but then also fulfill the obligations to the state that we agreed to. And by doing this, we'd really knock out our commitments at MSP from an infrastructure standpoint, and really may not even be, I guess, talking about it again in the next sales tax as far as the MSP goes for roadways. So we've been working on this quite some time that I've been here and built roads all around the prison, quite frankly, with it. But this would be our opportunity to knock those commitments out here. And I would say that the sales tax is coming to an end this year. Cole County's ends in next January, and ours is in April when it ends. But right now we don't have any place for those dollars necessarily. So I would suggest that maybe we look at moving those over here. So that's kind of the 3 things I'd like some direction on for the staff. It'd be helpful to us so we can go out and make some progress and get some of these things implemented. But I guess we could take them individually now or however anybody wants to do it. But that's kind of just a quick presentation and summary of some of the information I sent out last week.
Thank you, Mr. Marash. And I might start with any council questions for Mr. Marash. And then we do have, after that, a couple of people on that would like to speak to this item from the public. So start with council questions. Laura, Councilwoman Ward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Man, I just have a couple. Regarding the speed bump option, were there any other details associated with what would be done there? Like that awkward island there?
Yeah, what we're saying, I mean, everything's on the table, obviously, but this is conceptual, but the details of what we're thinking is, the little island in blue, that's now pavement where the offset left is. So we just take that out, saw that out, put some grass back, something cheap. And then move the left up to the intersection where you would normally find it, and that. But then you see the kind of the purple color there. Right now, there's a row of parking in that area on that church lot, and that would have to come out so we could see through that, and so reconfigure that a little bit.
Okay.
And I would really suggest, the city already owns the lot where that church sits, and we're renting it to them for a nominal fee. And that all came about because we were doing the larger project originally, of course. But, since we would be looking at selling that lot, I didn't mention that, go ahead and selling that lot either to the church or someone else. But since we do own it, I think it would be prudent of the city to go ahead and we have a sidewalk in there and these parking spaces that are essentially on right of way, and just go ahead and clearing all that up while we own it instead of just, leaving it for the next person to deal with.
So of course it'll entail new brighter striping, to the roads.
Oh yeah, I'm
So-
sorry.
And also would there be any type of beautification to that area as far as work on the curbs, just to make the entrance into that neighborhood a little bit nicer?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, there would be some more green space there at the intersection, right? Like I said, right now it's basically pavement all the way to the curb and gutter with a sidewalk. We would have to kind of look at some of the curb cuts and things like that and how to route we didn't put that on this drawing, but we would go ahead and work on those and make sure they were up to code. And like I said, we recently built that sidewalk project, so the sidewalk itself should be to code. But we were also going to look at, and this would occur anyway, I don't think it's been accomplished yet, but we're actually looking and working with Ameren to figure out how to upgrade street lights in that area.
Yeah,
It was mentioned that it was a little dark, and so they're just regular dusk to dawn lights. There might be 2 or 3 of them, but we would go ahead and try to upgrade those to something brighter and really light that area up.
Okay. All right. And I'm sorry, I have one more question regarding the road at MSP. Do we have a cost on what that is? You said we have 1.5.
Right.
From the Clark.
It's going to be in that same range, 1.5 to 2, but really the current, we have about 2 million set aside for MSP. That's probably slightly, I think our estimate's been around 1.6 thus far on the red roads. So we got a little extra there. And then we would, we could switch to 1.5, and that's kind of a round number. There might be money from the sale of the lot still, things like that. And then switch that money here. And we think we can get the yellow done for all of that. Of course, as we went through the engineering, we'd hone in on that estimate. And we always are cognizant we may need a little contingency there and things like that. Things will come up as they always do. But we would certainly plan only for what the budget was with a little bit of contingency thrown in. And we're thinking still all the lighting and all that kind of thing that would go along with putting in a roadway and infrastructure, basically building a commercial subdivision there that has lots ready to be developed, and kind of some economic development activity there.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
This is John Hensley. I just have a few questions. Hey, Matt, on the Clark Dunklin options, I just want to make sure I understand what you mean about, or what you intend about the parking spaces. I mean, the stop sign option, it looks like all of the parking spaces in the church parking lot could remain, if I'm reading your drawing correctly.
Yeah.
The speed hump option, it looks like, I mean, they are all covered by, the pink block. So that would just be us sort of reclaiming or retaining control of the right of way. But would those parking spaces be like, would that ground be changed in some way? Would we put up barriers or a big planter or something that would keep anyone ever from parking in that space again? Or, is it the type of thing where we could, grant permission, occasional permission to park in that space, but generally not, during other times?
Mr. Maresh, before you answer, there's a little bit of an echo, so if you're not on mute, I would ask anyone else to mute. Thank you. And Mr. Maresh?
Yeah, if David, you'd flip back to the four-way stop, I think is where John was mainly asking. Yeah. And so what we did, that's kind of the minimum right of way you need for the four-way stop. So it is less than the speed hump. And really that encompasses sidewalk and about maybe half of the parking spots. So what one would do, if there was a desire to leave those in there, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, but if there was that desire to leave those in there, one could go ahead and reclaim that right away, as you see in purple there, or blue or whatever, but then you could turn around and grant a permissive use for the parking and not really change it to a high degree, and just clean that up. We're going to have to redefine that corner anyway. Right now, it looks like the road is on the church property, so it's probably good we bought it anyway to get this cleaned up. But the property line was originally described out into the roadway, so at some point it kept expanding and sidewalks went in, but that was all built off property we didn't necessarily own at the time. So we'd like to clean that up in some manner. I'd probably still suggest if we're going to do permissive uses, if just to keep future options open for future staff, council, whoever, community in the community, that we go ahead and flip back, David. I believe the yellow line there, if you can see, there's a faint yellow line. That was originally kind of what we were thinking of, kind of following the curb line of the roundabout at the time, which kind of more or less mirrors this pink option. But one could still, I suppose, if you pursued the four-way stop, to go ahead and clean this right away up, but then allow permissive use for all the parking, and that would then offer some flexibility once we sold the lot to come back and reclaim that parking at a later date, if need be, for a larger improvement, which could be many years from now, but at least the councils in that time would have the option.
But that's not an option for the speed hump.
I guess on the speed hump, we would have to take the parking out because, you kind of need to still see, because traffic isn't going to stop when it gets to the intersection. It's just going to slow down enough where if you want to pull out and take a left. So you'd really want to remove it at that point. We just take the pavement out, put grass back. So it's not as much of an option there. I would say, as far as, the property goes, the city owns it outright. Like I said, we rent it to the Joshua House. How that agreement works, and Ryan can chime in if he'd like, but the way I understand it is, if we sell it close to the appraised value, which was $250,000 is what it used to be, before we took any parking or anything out, and that's why we had originally settled on about $220, because we were taking that row of parking out. And so that would kind of compensate that lot for that. But if we were to leave it in, perhaps we might want to go back to that appraised value, and it gets a little muddy on whether we have to bid it and they have first right to buy it at that time. If we're selling it cheaper, I guess the council can make any deal they want, but I'd have to go with purchasing and Ryan on that kind of deal there.
Yeah, well, and I guess I'll just say, if the parking situation that we'd be offering them was about the same under the new plan as it would have been under the roundabout plan, I mean, I think I would have less trouble with that than if it was becoming substantially worse under any new plan, aside from doing nothing. Switching gears just a little bit on the MSP request. I mean, the particular location and layout of the yellow street on your drawing. I mean, is the request tonight to approve the use of $1.5 million to build this specific road, or is it simply to dedicate this money to a road that we would be responsible for on the MSP site? Because I mean, we don't know what all the uses are going to be yet. It seems like we wouldn't be dedicating or be committing to a specific street layout without knowing what all is going to be going in there.
Yeah, it really is really about a connection from the top to the bottom. So that upper red road is kind of, it starts at the Lafayette and kind of ends over kind of at the top of the bluff. There's a little bit of grade to it. And then, of course, the one down at Chestnut on the other side of the red road is down close to the health lab, and those grades are more or less kind of set. So the goal was to connect the two up. and that was shown in various plans, but there's kind of a road there now, and so we probably would follow somewhat that alignment. So it wouldn't necessarily be to build it at this time, but we start looking at how the design of that all ties together, and certainly we would just have the money available once the construction contracts were written, but you wouldn't necessarily have to build it all at one time or anything like that, but we'd want to try to plan that in there with these other two roads just to make sure it all worked out in the end.
Okay, yeah. So it's still we're not going to go out as soon as possible and do any of this. It'll tie in with the final site use plans.
Oh yeah, and so
yeah, for sure. Okay.
Yeah,
I knew I didn't have to ask that question, but just wanted to make sure we got it out there. All right, thanks a lot.
Oh, no problem.
Right, and if I could just chime in, this location of this road has already been approached to the developer. So I think Matt may have mentioned this basic design was in our original application to EDA for the entire project. If you recall, our initial application to EDA was for a $7.5 million project. And so, when we did that, we also sent that on to the developers, and, the developers haven't expressed any trepidation with that or any real concerns. And so, just wanted to let you know that this would not be a surprise to the developers.
No, and it's familiar to us as well. I would just, but things can maybe changed or tweaked slightly, and just making sure that I understood the timing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Madam Mayor, this is Mike Lester. Just on the speed hump, just asking. I assume that's a wide, smooth hump type. Is that correct?
Yeah, we do not currently have any in the city, and I know there's always a little consternation when we even talk about it, and they've been talked about for years now. Other cities do this. We've done it in places I worked before. Certainly it's a little unorthodox, but I feel like, in this circumstance, considering what we're doing, if we're not going to do nothing, this might be a little better than the four-way stop, just in the fact that maybe we keep some traffic out of the neighborhoods, and people might get frustrated a little bit. I think they get more frustrated with having to stop every time at the intersection. It's my opinion. Either would work.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that kind of hump in other places. The other question is, just curious, how many accidents have happened at this intersection in the last couple of years?
I don't have that off the top of my head. I could always look it up and get back to you. But like I said, there was a handful. I'll say it that way. But one or two pedestrian accidents, as I recall. But it's been too long ago. I'd have to look that back up and get back to you.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Marash, on that note, how would this compare with the new speed hump? I think that's what they're calling the one in front of the ice arena. Is it similar?
Not really similar. That one's more of a speed table, and we have two pedestrian crossings right in the middle of it, and so that's kind of a long, accentuated thing. This isn't a speed bump like you might see in somebody's parking lot. That's just a small, real abrupt bump. They call them humps for a reason. It's because they're more gentle, and you slow down at 15, you really don't notice it bad at all.
Right.
But if you do go over it too fast, you'll get kind of shaken by it and want to drive slower next time. So it's similar, but not the same. No.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Mayor,
Councilman Vogt, I do have one question for Matt, just for clarification. How would the left-hand turn work from Dunklin to Clark? On the speed bump, on the speed hump option.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the one we have pulled up. Well, basically, we would just bring the left turn back up to the main intersection like at all other intersections where David has the termination of that green arrow there. I keep wanting to touch the screen, but it doesn't do anything for you guys. But he's showing it with his pointer. We'd bring the left turn up there, and that's kind of where a driver would be setting to look back to the right. And so then what would happen, the traffic would slow here at this hump. Everybody'd start slowing down. So they would have much more time to get out and get moving in the intersection where, you know, if there's nothing there or no stop sign or anything, then again, you know, you don't have the amount of time before you see the guy coming around the corner at you.
Thank you.
Councilman Hesse?
I just had a question about I know there's a utility pole on the corner of that intersection, like on the church side. Is there any, like, are we going to have to do anything with that pole for any of these options?
Well, I think we're looking at changing out the light on it for sure. And, you know, once we get into it, you know, there's always little utility adjustments we might do if there's something in conflict with the sidewalk or whatever. But again, you know, pretty minor improvement really compared to what we would normally do. Or,
Yeah, I don't know if there's
with
actually
a bigger project, you know.
Yeah, I'm not certain there's actually light on that pole versus it. I'm just looking at a Google image of it. It looks like it's just a lot of electrical wires.
Yeah, it could be. We were talking with Ameren to see, you know, what were the poles available, and if we can get not only a couple on this side, but some on the other side. Again, here I go pointing at the screen again. But that way, you know, we can really light that up. You know, like some high pressure type lights or something of that nature. They have some options, and really, what all that does is. There's probably not much installation fee there, but it just goes into our monthly rental of street lights. And there's a different charge for some of these brighter lights than we do some of the dusk to dawns. And I think we've done some in Mr. Lester's neighborhood recently. So, you know, just evaluating the possibilities. And I know a concern was the lighting. So we're looking at that, trying to upgrade.
And then I know, I mean, it's definitely a quirky intersection. So building off of Councilmember Vote's question about that left turn, it takes away that left turn from kind of going in the middle of that blue triangle there. And not having the left turn there, is that a safer option to put it back at the four-way intersection? Or if it's up there through that blue triangle, does that actually give it better sight lines and the parking's not need to be removed? And I guess I would just add, like, I know a lot of conversations on this. I can't remember if removing the blue triangle was the issue as opposed to better striping or delineation of what you're supposed to do in that space.
Yeah, I totally get the question because, you know, I think we all, as the engineers, we all said, okay, we're doing a major improvement. We did this traffic study and immediately jumped to, you know, bigger solutions. You know, as we thought, you know, the community wanted something different there. But it actually, you know, keeping it even where it is and just removing a little parking still doesn't do it. It's actually not better at all because it only got to contend with more parking. You got these houses in this funny curve, you know, as the curve comes in, you're kind of looking through the houses. So I'll do my best, but David, use your pointer. So he's in another room. But if you look up there, those are the sight lines, and you can kind of see them. These more dash lines are from there of what the sight lines are for various activities. So, you know, it actually gets worse just keeping it there. So it really probably wasn't the best solution to begin with. It was more about somebody trying to keep the parking, I guess, and doing the best they could. But it really didn't do them much good, actually.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions at this time?
Madam Mayor, can I just
yes,
confirm one thing real quick, because I'm making sure that I heard Matt correctly and I didn't write it down, which was my mistake. But the speed hump option, Matt, did I hear you correctly that would effectively keep the same or about the same parking situation for the church lot as the roundabout would have?
Yeah, correct. Our plan was always to remove that area of parking there and just kind of reconfigure it. David's kind of moving his cursor, right? We're following the roundabout, kind of like that property line where the curb line was.
I see it. All right.
But taking that out, so it effectively keep it about the same. Now, I'm not sure, you know, a lot of times we have these plans drawn up and people look at them and we, you know, in my mind, it's clear, but maybe it wasn't clear to the folks at the Joshua House. I'm not sure, but it would effectively keep it the same. That's why he left that line on there as the roundabout plan.
Okay. Yeah. And then to the extent that there's any, ability on the city's part to, allow occasional parking in as many of those spaces as possible and safe, of course that would be a good thing. But all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further council questions at this time? We do have some people that are signed up to speak to this item. So knowing that we'll likely have a motion and vote on this, let's take a moment for public comment. We have signed up Andrea Hendricks and Adrian Hendricks. So I'm not sure which one of them would like to go first, but I would welcome them to speak at this time. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Turgeon, city council members, and all of the guests here. My name is Adrian Hendricks. I'm the senior pastor of the Joshua House Church, and I just want to greet you all as we look at this issue. Many of you know that we've been serving Jefferson City for the past 10 years, really working with disimpoverished and disenfranchised people in our community. A lot of what we do is focused on the upliftment of people. And as we've looked at this issue, we've been at this corner for about 5 or 6 years now, and we've seen a lot of the issues that relates to the way traffic moves, the way that people were moving, and how those things would really affect the flow of the community. And so I had a couple of things that I just wanted to touch base on. One was, of course, it is important to the health of our church and what we do to have parking. And, we have a 7,000 square foot building, a lot of workshops, trainings, the types of events for development and so on and so forth that we want to host requires training. And we were already working with a deficit, which makes me think even as you have this type of building, the future buyers or the future persons who occupy this space, I would just caution to some degree the functionality of that type of space with that type of limitation in parking. I think that would be a concern. And of course, we don't want any buildings in our city to be underutilized or to be a place where it's just another blight because we don't have the ability to use that property in a way that benefits the city. There's been a lot of conversations as it relates to the roundabout. And of course, we've seen several renditions of the roundabout plan, and most of those altered the parking because we were looking at 706 Clark as another property that was going to be taken out, and then parking would be provided to offset the parking that was being lost. And so that was a compromise to some degree to losing 8 out of the existing 14 spaces that are currently there. So I think that that's something that we want to definitely take into consideration. And again, my major thought with the line of sight issues is that what I've seen is people driving too fast. And my concern has always been, because my kids would like to go across the street and buy candy and stuff like that, and the traffic was just driving too fast. I think that the speed bumps might be beneficial. I think that the stop signs would definitely be beneficial. I question whether a speed bump on one side of Dunklin and not on both sides of Dunklin would reduce the amount of speed that would eliminate the need for such critical line of sight issue. And so maybe there's some adjustment to be made there. And so, again, we want it to be safe. We want to, of course, have the right approach so that everyone in the community can be safe, and we're traveling without seeing cars almost come through the front of our building. But again, I do wonder if we have that type of building. I just haven't seen anywhere else in the city where that size of a structure has that limitation of spaces for functionality. I don't know how other businesses might be able to survive that type of condition. So that's something to think about. And I just wanted to say again, thank you all for letting us talk. I know my wife wanted to share as well.
Thank you, Mr. Hendricks. And at this time, we'll ask for Andrea Hendricks. Welcome.
Greetings, you all. Thank you so much for allowing us the opportunity to speak. I have had numerous conversations with Mr. Bangi, and I am just so grateful for his patience with me and answering my questions and my multiple phone calls and everyone else that has heard my concerns. But as we were discussing the roundabouts, my main question was the speeding and just how did they come about with the logistics of coming up with this plan. And so when I did my research and I looked at the reports, I saw that within the last 20 years that there have been 7 accidents at this report, according to MoDOT. And that's less than 1% of accidents. So yes, there may be visualizations. I mean, there may need to be some updates with the visualizations, but when you're driving down Clark, you don't see any signage. You don't see anything saying that, hey, left hand turn 500 feet ahead, or please slow down, left hand turn. I mean, just the simple things that could be put into place initially in order to make improvement. Because technically, if there's only been 7 accidents within that large time frame, it shows that something is working, especially within that area. And also considering that it is a residential area, which means that people are technically not driving as fast as they would be, which would not cause as much. Now, granted, I understand that this is the property of the city, and I completely understand that. However, I do believe that if you can just maybe simplify some of the things or even implement betterment of what's already there, maybe adding additional lighting, making the lines a little bit more clear or something like that, I think that would be more beneficial. However, again, going back to the point that within the last 20 years, and we've only been there for 5 years, but within the last 20 years, there's only been 7 car accidents on that intersection, again, bringing it to 1%. So I understand the importance of creating that visualization. However, I'm also stating that there may be some already there, but if we can just do some simple improvements, minus taking the front of the parking lot, I think would be something that we would greatly appreciate consideration. And I do understand that you have options and you could potentially put it out for additional bidders and things of that. We were hoping that this will be the place for the Joshua House home. We have created resources for the children to come and be able to do where they don't have internet service. We provide computer services, after school care services, and things of those nature, and being able to provide adequate spacing so that the kids, because cutting off that space, then what about the kids that are getting off the bus and trying to cross the street to their home with limited sidewalk space and things of that nature? So there are a lot of things to consider. Again, I understand that this is your property and you get to make the final decision. However, I wanted to look at the overall view of the entirety versus the limited view of what the plan is and how it would be impacted. So that's all I needed to say. And thank you guys for allowing us to speak.
We appreciate your input. Is there anyone else on the line or on the meeting that would like to speak on this item tonight? Okay, we appreciate that, and I'll turn it back to council for some deliberation and potential motion. I believe I'll call on Councilman Fitzwater.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, thank you very much, and I appreciate all the discussion on this. I know the ward council members have been very active. So what I tried to do is codify what Matt put in the letter to us to get a discussion point. So I'll read the motion, and then I just had 2 comments related to that. Basically, I just move that City Council proceed with the following action that includes the 3 recommendations. First, that the City of Jefferson notify MoDOT that the city is no longer interested in participating in the governor's transportation cost share program for either the Clark interchange or the Clark Dunklin intersection. Then 2, that the city of Jefferson forego any further changes to the Clark Dunklin intersection at this time, and that city council requests that staff proceed with negotiating a sale of the property and develop a contract for council's approval at a later date. And 3, that the city of Jefferson work with Cole County to reassign the funds saved from the Clark and Dunklin project, approximately $1.5 million, to the MSP project so the city can fully build out the streets that we are contractually obligated to build at the MSP. My 2 comments would be, I know there's been some discussions on item 2. I took the option of do nothing. There may be some interest in amending that. And, again, I kind of lean toward the council members in that area. The second comment would be that, I appreciate Councilman Hensley raising the issue in regard to the actual location of that road within the property. So the motion does say that the dollars would go to the project so that we can complete our obligations. But as he indicated, we need to keep those options of where that final road is within the project. So with that, Madam Mayor, I would make that motion.
Thank you, Councilman Fitzwater. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion, Madam Mayor. This is Shriver.
Okay, we have a motion and second, and any further discussion? I can't see all the hands with the that on the screen, so any council member? Oh, Councilman Hussey, maybe?
Mayor, yeah, thank you. I would say that I agree with part 1. I'd be open to some further conversation on part 2. And part 3 about the MSP commitment, I guess I would want to pull that out of the decision process on this Clark Dunklin and have a separate conversation. I guess I don't feel like tonight we necessarily need to commit $1.5 million to an MSP project. I guess I would want some time and some council deliberation and what other projects may exist to do something with it. So I guess I don't know, I would hear some council dialogue, and then we can I can propose an amendment to the original motion. I guess I don't have an issue with, I don't know, doing nothing, or if there's a incremental approach about increased lighting, but it seemed to me that at least the blue triangle piece and moving that left turn lane made some sense, but I'll be curious what others might think. But I would say that I would prefer, or my vote tonight would be to not commit the 1.5 million to MSP. That doesn't mean that I stand opposed to that. I just don't think it's necessary packaged together in this motion tonight, and it's probably worthy of just some further conversation if there's something else that those dollars can be dedicated for.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councilman Hensley.
May I ask Councilman Fitzwater to read the 3 items again, please?
Well, actually, I sent it to Ryan. Ryan, is there a way that you could just forward it to everybody? Then they'd have the actual document.
Yeah, absolutely.
That might be easier. I don't mind reading it again, but if that is easier for you.
Just the bold. I mean, just the bullet points, please.
Okay. One was that and most of this is lifted out of the document from Matt.
Uh-huh.
The first one is that the city notify MoDOT that it's not interested in participating in the governor's transportation cost share program. So essentially that we do not want to proceed with those additional 2 roundabouts. In addition, the council has already voted not to do the third one. The second just takes the middle ground, or I guess the position that we do nothing at the intersection. And again, I kind of couch that, I defer to, I don't drive through that section. So, if there's an amendment on that section, I'm certainly willing. I just tried to get something on the table. And then the third is essentially lifted out of the document that the city of Jefferson work with Cole County to reassign the funds saved from the Clark and Dunklin project, approximately 1.5 million, to the MSP project so that the city can fully build out all of the streets that we are contractually obligated to build at MSP. And essentially this is, and I'm not a big fan of the term, but this is a shovel-ready project for the most part. It at least is farther along than anything that we might consider. And, I get the comments made by Councilman Hussey. I appreciate that, but this one we have been working on and just seemed like to expend those dollars on a project that at least has some momentum now. I mean, obviously, if the project gets sidetracked somewhere down the road, then all of those dollars would be recouped. But this seemed like the best way that we could meet that commitment. So that's why I included item 3.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Madam Mayor.
Councilman.
I would like to make a motion that the second piece of Councilman Fitzwater's bill be amended to pursue the speed hump option presented by staff at the Clark and Dunklin intersection.
We have a motion and second to amend to accept the speed hump option. So,
okay, that's good. I assume that includes improvement in lighting and some of the other things with that. Is that correct?
I would expect so. I mean, those have been sort of, aside from the do nothing option, my understanding of all of our conversations in total has been to otherwise better mark and better light the intersection, in addition to whatever infrastructure pieces or traffic control items we might install. Matt, if I'm incorrect in that assumption, please let me know.
I see Matt nodding his head, so believe that to be correct. So we have a motion. Councilman Graham.
Make sure that I totally understand this correct. So we're talking about just adding 1 or 2 speed humps.
It would just be the one as kind of depicted there on the diagram.
And we're not doing anything as relates to taking away any parking from the Joshua House.
Well, it would come with the parking removal as shown there as well. Yes.
And that was 7 spots.
I don't recall. David, are you on here? Could you tell us how many spaces that was in that parking lot?
Yeah, there's 7 spots that are marked, and then there's an additional spot that cheats into the drive approach that's also being used. So, 7 or 8, depending on exactly how you want to count that.
And so based on the concerns that Mr. and Mrs. Hendricks had, this will not be sufficient to what they're trying to do at the Joshua House, if I'm correct. This specific motion. I just want to make sure I'm clear. And then, is that correct?
Are you asking me then?
Yeah.
It sounds like they would prefer the parking stay in some fashion, but it wouldn't really be possible with this option.
That's what I thought so as well.
Okay.
So that's okay. All right.
Madam Mayor.
I think I heard Councilman Schreiber.
Yes, Mr. Marash, was this proposal in any way be affected or need to be altered if a decision was made by MFA to reopen some type of business at that intersection again?
No, we would account for, that still being a lot because, before we were recommending buying that and removing that, but under this plan, we would do some work over, if you notice, on the some of the sidewalks, things like that, probably in that area, but not, it could be opened back up to something else under all the guidelines and codes of the city, of course. But yeah, we would anticipate something going back there.
Councilman Kemp. Thank you.
Did you say me? I'm sorry.
Yes, Councilman Kemna.
Okay, so from my understanding, the motion on the table is we're keeping number one, which was the no cost share with the state, correct? We're just going to forego that, and then Hensley proposed to add the speed hump, and then number three stays included, to where we're still committing that money to MSP. Is that clear? Is that where we're at?
I believe we're discussing the details of what the current motion and second to amend. We haven't approved that amendment yet, but that is what's currently being proposed.
Okay. All right. So if that is what's currently on the table, then I would agree with these 3 points to where we're at right now with Hensley's motion to add the speed hump.
Okay, and we haven't quite voted on it yet. I thought we'll make sure we have any other clarification, then we'll vote to accept the amendment, and then we'll vote on the motion as amended.
Okay. Do we have a second on John's? I thought Laura.
I believe there was a second. Yeah. And Laura had your hand up. Should we go ahead and vote to accept this amendment first?
Yes, I do have one question regarding the parking spots, Matt. With the roundabout, how many spots were we going to keep, or would be lost?
It would basically, I think David threw the diagram up there previously, but basically it would take out that whole front row parking with the roundabout as well. And so the little faint yellow line under there kind of cut through them all, as you can see.
Oh, it was going to take all of them anyway?
Yes.
I thought it was just going to take that corner.
Well, it basically takes them all. It cuts right through there, and then you got your sidewalks and everything.
Matt, can I clarify? Can I ask one question? And it's Mr. Hendricks mentioned something about another property that might have been part of the deal at some point that would have offset the parking space loss. I don't know that I was ever aware of that. I'm sure that I'm currently not familiar with what he was talking about, but can anyone provide any more detail about that?
And David, you might be able to add more to the discussion than I, but as my understanding, they were considering also looking at that property. Is that correct, David? Do I have that all right?
Which property? I'm sorry.
Right.
The 706 Clark, right adjacent to it.
Okay.
I understand the church was looking at that property to acquire as well.
I see.
For
Okay,
future parking and maybe playgrounds or whatever expansion of some kind.
Yeah, that is correct, Matt. They were looking at the possibility of sometime in the future of purchasing 706 Clark. And were they to do so, the front part of that property, as I understood it, could have become more parking, which would have been about equated to what they have today. And the back portion of that lot, I think they had plans on that to be part of the, playground or something for the daycare or something that they had thought of there.
Okay, but that was a plan by the church,
right?
On its own.
In our property deal.
Okay, this was okay. Just making sure. All right, thank you.
And I know Mr. Hendricks was pulling up that map. And is there another question? We're getting a lot of background feedback. So if you're not speaking, I'll have everyone else mute.
Madam Mayor, this is Councilman Fitzwater. I just had two questions.
I'm trying.
The first one for Councilman Hensley, and it's just for information. Are you comfortable the neighborhood is okay with the speed hump option? I get there's no real good option, so I get you're trying to do something there. Are you comfortable that there's support for that?
Well, sir, I will admit that I have not pulled the speed hump option thoroughly through there. And my sense, and it's mostly a gut sense, is that stop signs, I mean, ultimately, pretty much any improvement that we make to this intersection, I think, will, on net be welcomed by the neighborhood. Part of me thinks that the stop sign option, especially during peak times, might be more, might cause more frustration for the neighborhood than the speed hump option. And I'm certainly not speaking for the leadership of the Joshua House Church, because they certainly have their own concerns and interests in this, which have been shared tonight as well. But I mean, I'm comfortable enough that the speed hump option, along with the other lighting and signage and marking improvements at that intersection, would be an improvement to that area, in the interest of safety and in the interest of improving traffic flow through there, and that it would be accepted as such by, I think, most of the neighborhood. And to be totally honest, since our last vote on this to scrap the roundabout altogether, I think I've received exactly zero feedback from anyone, and from any constituent on that issue. But I think the speed hump is. I mean, none of these are perfect options, and I totally understand and appreciate the safety and line of sight concerns, and that has to be our North Star here when we're talking about improving an intersection. But I think it's I think it would be okay in the neighborhood.
My hesitation is, and I appreciate your input into it. I'm not a fan of speed bumps. I mean, I spoke against when Councilman Lester, he wasn't even on the council at the time, we were talking about doing them on Adams Street. I just hate to see them get in our community, but I get your point that this is maybe an option that the community would like. I just had two questions for Mr. Marash, if I could. First one is, does the speed hump cause any problems to Public Works as far as pushing snow or those kind of things? I mean, I know they're in other cities, so there's a way around it, but does that cause any kind of problems here?
Well, just that the crew would obviously have to be aware of it, and they would be once it went in. I mean, they're maintaining it and that kind of thing. So they, it's designed in such a way it's not abrupt, so you go up and over, and we just deal with it like we do many other things, roundabouts, etc.
And my second question is to kind of take into account the comments that were made. Is there any way to do the speed hump and try to shave that corner a little bit less and preserve more of the parking? I know the line of sight is an issue, but is there any way that we can save a little bit of it?
We can always go back and look, and certainly, this is kind of a general direction. I take it from the council if this proceeds, and we would go back, of course, and we know the primary person looking at buying the lot are the Hendricks, and we would go back and have to speak with them some more and talk to them about what finally happened and see if we could do any better. I think David's looked at it pretty thoroughly, but we can always go back and see what other arrangements can be made and try to work with them on it as we proceed.
So, excuse me.
Let's see. I know I see Councilman Graham's hand up. Why don't we take Councilman Graham and then Mrs. Hendricks? Councilman Graham?
Yes, I was just going to ask the question to Mr. and Mrs. Hendricks, or either Matt. The total number of parking spaces that the church have currently is what? Maybe the Hendricks can answer that. I don't know.
Yeah, there are approximately 14 spaces on the front side of the building and five to six spaces on the back side of the building underneath the structure. And so, as you can imagine, we've always had to deal with parking issues, but this will be removing a significant amount of parking in that space.
So I guess I'm concerned. I know, I guess I said it earlier, and I know that Councilor Fitwater just said it a while ago. But when we have the church is growing and is continue to grow, and I'm concerned about the individuals don't have a place to park, and that's Wednesday night Bible study, that's church, that's any after school programs, and we're going to take 7 parking spots. They only have 14. That's a concern for me, taken away from a church. I hope it's a concern for all of us. So I just hope that we really can look at that and can try to make some adjustment to where we're not taking that many parking spaces. I know I drive that area all the time. Some of you may not drive it hardly at all, but it is a concern as relates to the parking, and we need to do something as relates to the safety of it as well too. So I hope Matt can come back with a different drawing that would not shave off as many as 7 parking spaces. We only have 14 in the front. So, and we can't ask the elderly to walk across the street. Just my 2 cents.
Mrs. Hendricks?
One thing I wanted to add as well is that initially with the roundabout drawings, they were going to reconfigure the parking lot to where we can get more parking into the front lot. So it wasn't just all of them taken off the front, but they were going to put a different, they were going to put, beautify the entrance on the left-hand side where the entrance was coming off of Clark. And then they were going to, instead of the parking going straight, they were going to make the parking go sideways. And so that was something that we were able to squeeze in additional parking for that area. I mean, for that space to try to maximize as much as we possibly can. Although there would only have been one way to enter into the parking lot, we felt like we were able to adjust to that versus the entire row being removed. So now the entire row is going to be removed with only the back row left versus it having, they were going to reconfigure before. And so it wasn't like that originally with the roundabout. So we were able to, like I say, maneuver with the roundabout based on how they were going to reposition the parking spaces. But now to remove all of them altogether and only leave the back row with just 7 spaces is not what we originally discussed. That was something that came after the fact. And so, and then in addition to that, they were beautifying the front entrance and adding the additional spaces. I mean, and we would have had area to park on the street, but now the street has been removed as well, as from what I can understand, from what I've been told. I'm not exactly sure, so don't quote me on that if that's wrong. But that's what was originally stated prior to. And so that's why we said, yes, that would be something we can work with. However, now with that not being the case, it causes issues. But again, we understand that you guys have ownership of it. However, this is the home of the Joshua House Church, and we were hoping that we would be able to stay there. But we have the capacity to fit 450 people in the building. And as all of us are business-minded people, we understand the logistics of having a parking space of the capacity of a building to fit 450 people with 14 parking spaces is already a challenge, but we were trying to maneuver what was available to us at that time with the other businesses that in conjunction with us would allow us to use spaces when we have large events. They will allow us to use their parking spaces. So that was something that has been agreed upon. But now I'm not exactly sure. But again, with me doing my own research on how things are done and again, looking at that there has only been in the last 20 years, 7 accidents, which is again, less than 1%. And yeah, so that's my comment on that at this time.
Thank you, Mrs. Hendricks. And I'm sorry, Mr. Morash.
Yeah, I might just clarify, and that's what I was alluding to, is that, we could go back with Hendricks and, we're talking about a property deal, and there's always negotiation and a property deal, and they're exactly correct. when we had a much larger project, we were able to reconfigure the lot a little bit because we were going to save putting in a retaining wall. So it was kind of a wash for us, and it worked out in their favor. Now that we're not doing that bigger project, we wouldn't have those kind of resources out there or those kind of equipments, but we could always work with the Hendricks on, maybe the price of it, that they could do something else with it or whatever. Something in that negotiation, that property deal, because that still has to come back to the city council to be approved, even after this. It's just that you're allowing us to go back and negotiate that sale of the property with the Hendricks, and there may be some other considerations they need, because what they agreed to for the price they agreed to is, they are correct, is no longer there. So maybe there's something there. That's why I said I'd like to go back and speak with them directly about it and figure out what can be done and make the best deal for everybody. Obviously, if it's too steep, the council may not want to accept that deal and try to sell it to someone else. But hopefully we could come to some agreement and that the council would be able to approve. So.
Thank you, Mr. Marash. So,
Madam Mayor. I'm
yes.
sorry. Can I just make one final comment here?
Sure.
I mean, of course, we all would like to get as close to the original deal as was, with respect to what parking would have been with the roundabout versus not with the roundabout. The one thing that I can tell you in this neighborhood, and I'm through this intersection numerous times a day, is that the one option that would not go over well is to do nothing. That would be seen as a big sidestepping of responsibility by this council. I remember a while ago, this council voted 8-2 to pursue the roundabout in this intersection, which would have, done just about the same thing to the parking lot as we're talking about now, or that might even been at the time when the whole building was going to come down. I can't remember exactly what iteration that was. But now we're talking about scaling back to something that actually addresses the problem, and addressing the problem while keeping as much parking there. And I don't know if the church can still pursue 706 or not, but 7 or 14 parking spots for a 450 person, congregation is going to be tight anyway, to say the least. But anyhow, to do nothing here would I think really be failing this neighborhood in this particular intersection. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Hensley. And Mr. Marash, so from what you just said in your comments, is the current motion that is being proposed allow you the flexibility to do the negotiation with the Hendricks on this property and see if you can come to an agreement? I mean, like you said, this is not necessarily final. This motion is mainly giving you direction. It's not a final decision until you come back to us. Is that correct?
Right. I mean, once we know the improvement you all would like to see there, then we can certainly go back, and that's what the memo even says, to just the authority then to go back with that in mind and negotiate with the Hendrickses on the sale of the property and see if we can come to some arrangement. That still then would come back to the council for approval.
And in addition, and I know Councilman Hensley mentioned this also, and it is in the chat, that Mr. Butler has asked if that property is for sale. I assume that's the 706 that you're talking about for additional parking. And so that may be something that could be looked at during your negotiation process as well. Mr. Butler also asked what will happen to the old gas station with this plan, and it's my understanding that this would be no change to that, correct?
Correct. Yeah, we wouldn't be pursuing that property any longer.
Okay, so we have not yet voted to amend the current motion that's on the table. So the amendment, we have the motion and second. So at this time, I would ask for us to vote to accept.
Madam Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
It sort of seems like there might be more friction on this particular option than is worthwhile. I'm going to, at this time, withdraw the speed hump amendment. proposal, please.
Okay, and is the second rescinded as well? So what we currently have is the motion is to do nothing, but I think it would be good to give staff some direction to talk with the Hendricks and look at parking and look at which option may work.
Mayor.
So
yes.
Or go ahead, Councilmember Lester.
Councilman Lester and then Hussey.
Okay, my question is the do nothing part of this? Does that mean actually do nothing, or do we still, within that, do we improve the lighting and improve other things at the intersection that certainly less than the speed bump, but doing the other things or not?
Correct. We would still go out. We've already set that into motion, looking at the lighting and such things like that. And then of course, we would still be negotiating, I assume, with the Hendrickses trying to sell this property or with someone, just because, you know, the city usually isn't in the business of holding real estate like this. And so we would still proceed with that.
Councilman Hussey.
Well, I guess I know stop signs can often be seen as a challenge, but at the same time, if the desire is to improve the safety of the intersection and have as minimal impact on church parking as possible, it appears to me that a stop sign at this intersection can correct that particular issue. I know that it will cause people traveling Clark to slow down and stop, but I guess I would at least be open to consideration and feedback on that. And so I would, you know, make the motion to amend to put forth the stop sign option.
Second.
Is there any further discussion on that amended piece? And if not, I'll first ask for a vote to accept the amendment, and then we will have discussion on that amended motion. So should we do a roll call, Emily?
So let me ask, this is Mike Lester. So look, with the stop sign, you take out half of those parking spaces?
Yeah, I mean, there's ways to do it. I think any of the options, I guess I had in my, you know, head, you know, we'd still go back and negotiate with the Hendricks to see what we can best do with that lot to improve sight distance long term. Whether it's leave some in, clear up the right of way, leave some in, and you know, give some permissive use of right of way in some fashion, and or remove them and work with them in a different way. But you know, we still have to go. It's all still in a good. There's been no paper ink. There's nothing inked on paper for the sale of this lot at this point. Once the roundabout's gone, so we have to go back and do that legwork. So if I know what the improvement is that everybody wants to see, we'll go back and do the best we can and bring it back to council.
And Mayor, I guess for Mr. Marash, my question would be, if the intersection now becomes a stop sign, four-way stop intersection, would there really be truly a need to take much of that parking? Because now if I'm making that left turn, I pull up and I should have confidence, right, that everybody is stopping in that intersection. I don't necessarily need to be looking 200 to 300 feet down Clark to determine what traffic is doing, correct?
Correct. That's why there's a stop sign option. That it does show we do need to still clear up where the right of way line is or isn't. Right now it's out. It's the lot goes out into the street. So we gotta bring that back in some normal place. It's got that funny shape to it. That's our typical sight corner that we would have at any intersection. So that property wasn't well described from the beginning. Just an old property that wasn't well described. So there are some couple options that we could still look at, but it's all about negotiating those with the Hendricks and see what best fits everyone's need. And I'll try to make a good deal for the community and also a good deal for the church, to helpfully stay there. And so that we can have an owner in that building, the city can sell it, and we can also still have a safe intersection.
I would just, with the few accidents, whether that stop sign solution is warranted. But I would also say that you're probably going to get more rear end accidents with this if you have all those stop signs. But
I should clear up. I think those 7 accidents were for those reports lag if you just get on the internet and look at those. And I think they're only that was a 4-year span, I want to say, from 2010 to 2014. So, there's quite a lag getting those in the system, and what occurred before that. So I think there was more than that over the last 20 years. That was just a short window that seemed to probably pop up. And those are confusing to look at.
Councilman Kemna?
I was just going to say, with the stop sign issue, I have some concerns, especially with traffic that's coming across the overpass, heading like towards the Joshua House. If for whatever reason that gets backed up, I mean, you're running into Miller Street, you're running into the overpass. I just feel like that could be an issue with this stop sign. That's my concern if we went to that direction. I think you're looking at potential problems by putting those stop signs in place.
And I
know it's been asked earlier, but putting the speed hump, you still feel certain you'd have to take the parking? Or you said also that you and David could work on that and see. So I'm still a little confused on, could you?
The parking would have to, the speed hump, we would definitely want to remove the parking to have the safety improvement. But I think it shouldn't be lost on everybody. We haven't reached any final deal with the Hendrickses on this, and it really probably depends on the solution here. Like I said, even if we did nothing, I'd probably still go back and what is the value of the lot? I hate to have this discussion right now. Ryan's probably glaring at me or something about negotiating real estate in this open meeting, but it's kind of what we're talking about. Is every right-of-way deal is a negotiation, and I don't try to, as a city staff person, we try to look out for the community in these deals, and we try to look out for the property owner, and then bring the best deal to the city council. So we don't try to take advantage of anybody or anything like that. Try to be very open about it on both sides, because it's going to be open discussion eventually anyway. So we just do that up front and try to work with both sides to come to a good agreement.
And also there is really, when we mention do nothing, that's not necessarily true, because you mentioned looking at the lighting and improving that and the striping and doing some other improvements. So that's not really do nothing.
Mayor.
Yes, Councilman Hesse.
So to try to bring this to a close, because it feels awkward to make transportation policy in this meeting format. It seems like of the original presentation by staff to us, item number 1 is the most time sensitive thing that needs to be done. That's about communicating back to the state. And it feels like we're probably in agreement there. I think the thing hanging over the head here is the sale of the property and wanting to bring some closure for the church, the Hendricks, but also the city on that. But if I'm correct, I feel like what I'm hearing is that, we're talking about, like, my question about the stop sign would need to take any of the parking spots, but it feels as though part of the issue, right, is about that the property sort of exceeds or extends into the roadway already, and that we would be potentially using this sale to sort of correct that issue. And I guess if there's not a chance to sort of walk down that path to correct that, and not to do nothing tonight, but I guess I am a little concerned about council members Hensley and Schreiber. Maybe they don't quite have feedback from their constituents in the ward about options. And I know I'm the one that put forth the stop sign, but at the same time, a lot of times when we have a stop sign in this community, it goes through traffic and transportation. There's a public comment period. It's vetted. And so even then, I'm probably a little hesitant. I do wonder if our best course of action tonight is really to tell the state no and to maybe take an action to authorize staff or go into a closed session later to communicate to staff what specifically we're comfortable with when it comes to the sale of that property, about what we think we need to retain for a future improvement, and then continue to work on what exactly that improvement is for the intersection. Not to belabor this too long, but at the same time, I'm not exactly super comfortable maybe tonight determining if it's a speed hump, a stop sign, and those sorts of things. So if that requires me to withdraw on the stop sign for now, I am happy to pull back on that amendment. And I think Councilmember Hensley was the second on that. I don't know if he's comfortable with that as well.
Fine, thank you.
So then I guess I would offer, and I'm looking for Ryan on my screen, what's the best way to split off piece one right now and vote on telling the state that we're not going to pursue that project? Is that to bifurcate this?
Yeah. So essentially, I think a motion to amend Mr. Fitzwater's motion to only include point number one might be the cleanest way to do what you're saying, Mr. Humphrey.
So I guess I would make that motion, not to say we can't further discuss, but let's just at least get that piece done right now at this point in time. So my motion, I guess right now, would be to amend it to take up part one, which informs the state that we are no longer pursuing that particular project through their grant program.
Second.
Second.
Madam Mayor, I've got a comment.
Councilman Fitzwater?
I mean, essentially, you're stripping out items 2 and 3, and they were all three an integral part of this discussion. So I do not support stripping out item 3. I think we need to have a discussion on that, and I've laid down the reasons why I think that is important. And I just don't think it's appropriate to pull that item out in this motion.
Could that be done as a separate motion? Can Councilman Fitzwater or any council member do item 3 separately then?
Yeah, I mean, it could be essentially there could be a separate motion to take up 1 and 3, or after this discussion on 1, there could be another motion to take up the point number 3. It's just kind of whatever the council pleasure is.
Mayor, I would just add my intention was not to further discuss potentially 2 or 3. It was just to sort of separate. Let's just take up 1. And then if Councilmember Fitzwater wants to make the same motion about item 3, then let's just do that. But in my head, they feel like separate issues.
Okay, and to be clear, we have currently the motion and second is to only take up item 1, if I'm understanding that correctly. So at this point, I'll ask for a roll call to accept that amended motion.
I've got further discussion before you do that.
Councilman Fitzwater?
I know that there's a motion on the table, so what I'm about to say is not in the form of a motion. I would be willing to put it, but is there a way just to reword the second piece of that, strip out the first line and half of the line down, and just begin that the city council requests that staff proceed with negotiating the sale of the property and develop a contract for council's approval at a later date, and to continue to review road improvement options at the Clark-Dunklin intersection, which I think incorporates some of the things Councilman Lester was trying to say, and just give us the option to continue to look at whether it's striping, as Councilman Woman Ward talked about, or additional lighting and other options, but it allows us to move forward with the other pieces of the proposal.
Mr. Molman, is that acceptable? Or Mr. Marash, I guess both of you.
Yeah, it's all acceptable to me anyway. We certainly, we just were trying to get a preference. I'm hearing there may not be a huge preference either way. It's kind of some for this and some for that. So, and some of it may depend on the property that we can strike.
Mayor, if I can interject, I guess I initially had concerns about making a decision about rededicating these dollars to MSP this evening. That does not speak to that I'm not in favor of that, but I do not understand the need to do that while we're making a decision on this Clark-Dunklin interchange. That if we choose to not proceed with this project, I still think that it warrants further conversation to determine if there are other things that need to be improved in this particular area of the community. Can there, are there other particular safety issues that might occur along Clark, Dunklin in that space to maybe be more in line with the expressed intent for those dollars? And so I don't if we're to package it as Councilmember Fitzwater described, I think that rewriting Section 2 makes, that might make sense. Section 1, but I'll ultimately vote against that final motion simply because I do not think that Part 3 needs to be decided this evening in this manner.
I guess I would ask Mr. Marash, kind of to that point. I know that when staff brought this forward to us after the original roundabout had been voted down, that Mr. Marash had mentioned that this option, after having consultants look at this, that they came to the conclusion in the staff recommendation of the speed hump, that would be the staff recommendation. Certainly, I guess second would likely be the stop sign, but knowing that it could potentially not improve the safety as much or cause maybe other rear end type of accidents or make it a little more challenging. So I believe that's why staff came to us with that specific recommendation tonight, based on what the consultants had done with their review. And you can correct me on that, Mr. Marash, but I believe that's why you brought that to us, although it sounds like there may be a little bit of flexibility here in making that decision between the two options. And then on the MSP part, and I know Mr. Marash had mentioned that it does fulfill the obligation that already exists. So it's a little bit different than any other of the projects out there because it already is an obligation to the state that is a requirement of attaining this property. And as we're reaching the end of the sales tax cycle, that would be, also, I think you had made that point, and then maybe and also the fact that it is also still on the east side. So that might make council feel a little more comfortable in at least moving forward with that MSP reallocation portion. And then also knowing that we have a work session coming up that we'll discuss other options for the new sales tax as that begins. But this would be a good way to wrap up the current one since this project is ready. I don't know if that helps at all, or Mr. Marash.
Yeah, you want me to answer that? Yeah, basically once we decided, or the council decided not to pursue kind of the bigger improvement, it seemed to be that the council was looking for a more cost-effective solution, and so basically we're down to stop signs, speed humps, those kind of things. And after looking at both of those options, seemed the least obtrusive to the neighborhood and those using it to recommend the speed hump. That was basically it, just kind of weighing the pros and cons from a staff perspective and selecting that. Either are acceptable, as noted in our memo. Do nothing, still acceptable. It's just that it doesn't get any improvement to the intersection necessarily from a sight distance traffic control standpoint. The reason also then to bring up MSP was kind of tied to the number one point, is that we were borrowing some of their money. That doesn't seem like a good option for number one any longer, since we do have a grant over there. And then I have been contacted by many of you here on the council talking about, well, what can we do with this money? Can we do this? Can we do that? And so just that's just kind of one-off conversations or emails that I have. And so, looking at the staff, looking at that, how can we implement that quickly was kind of our thought process. And once you have, and plus having a commitment to do something that's unfunded at this point seemed like it was prudent, because that money did kind of fit that budget to go ahead and recommend that. And when I say recommend it from the staff, it's from the public works staff. And so I'm sure there's diverse opinions on all of it. But I feel like sometimes we like to give a recommendation on things, and so that way we can knock that out, and folks can then focus on the next sales tax. And it's going to be different than this one. I already, there might be some different projections on the money coming in there, and it kind of depends on if there's any more left undone things that we've committed to do at the prison. Do we need to have more MSP money placed in the future sales tax? If not, then we can focus the next sales tax on other things. So it does have a bearing on our discussion getting ready to occur at the end of the month, really. And so I was just kind of getting some direction on that. Thought it might just, get some traction just because of our unfunded commitment there.
Right. And if I could just kind of add on to what Matt said is, from my perspective, from the legal realm, do nothing is really not something that I would recommend to the city council. We just have too much information about that intersection and the recommended site distances, what actually exists there. I think we have to do something to improve the geometry over there, because otherwise we're going to have lots of expensive engineering reports that would be used as evidence against us in a T-bone crash. The standard for cities and their liability under the sovereign immunity law is there was a dangerous condition you knew about and didn't do anything about it. And the do nothing approach sure sounds like fulfilling all the elements of making the city liable under sovereign immunity. So, I just kind of wanted to bring that to the city council's attention, that there are some, now that we do have the information, I think we have some legal obligation to do something to improve the site distances and improve the geometry in that intersection.
And I know that, Councilman Schreiber.
When we discussed the issue, it was brought up about not doing anything. I think that might have been misunderstood. I don't think that the intent is that we don't do anything. The intent is that right at this time, we might need to look at the options a little bit closer. And I think that everyone on the council, and I've listened very intently to what the different proposals and the comments that were made. I think that everyone on the council that has spoken this evening definitely wants to see the right thing done over there. We want to see it a safe point of ingress and egress throughout the area for the neighborhood. We want to see to try to work out something for Joshua House Church as much as possible for their benefit as well, because they are good neighbors in the neighborhood. But then there are some other issues that come up. And, I've been sitting here trying to figure out, well, how are the engineers that are the ones that really have the task to make some determinations, what are they going to really be able to figure out as to what will work? For example, when Councilman Kimner brought up the issue of traffic at peak times coming off of the ramps up there on Clark Avenue. We've got Shrimp Plumbing right there, which is hard enough to get in and out of anyway, and they're fairly busy. And if we have some other things that that are going in up there. There are several businesses in that particular area. So, you know, how do we make a determination of whether a four-way stop will work? I mean, you know, will it just create a greater problem than what we think already exists? And the same for speed bumps. So my thinking is that if this is just put on hold, not indefinitely, but so that maybe some additional determination can be made by engineering, so we have a little clearer picture of, since we're not going to do a roundabout, what really will work at that particular location. That's my concern.
Well, Mr. Marash, haven't the engineers told you their recommendation, though, is the speed hump?
Well, that's the one the staff engineering selected here in Public Works, just because of looking at the pros and cons of each. Each would work. They just have different negatives and positives.
And it seems like, I know that one of the biggest challenges, I think, for council to make the decision has been the parking for the Joshua House Church. And I agree completely. I think that if parking was out of it, it would be, the decision likely would have been made already tonight by now. But I know that with parking being the concern, I wonder if, is it being not short-sighted, but by just looking at what these 6 or 7 spots mean overall, or looking more long-term, knowing that as the church continues to grow, that those 6 or 7 aren't enough regardless. What they really need is looking at the option, and I believe you said it was at 706, and looking at maybe other options to actually solve the parking problem. The few spaces that would be taken for road improvement wouldn't necessarily be a good long-term solution as they continue to grow anyway, but I don't know if that's a piece that would still be looked at, Mr. Marash.
Yes, I mean, that is what we're getting at when we say negotiate with the Joshua House folks to see if we can come to some arrangement on that building so that they would be interested in still buying it, yet improve the safety in some fashion.
After hearing the conversation tonight, Mr. Marash, what would give you the best direction so that you could, what do you need from us so you can at least begin those discussions?
We can certainly begin the discussions more thoroughly with Joshua House. It sounds like everybody is amenable to not retain this property any longer than necessary. And we can certainly continue that and see if we can come to some arrangement that would work for both stop signs and speed humps and everything, or even roundabouts way in the future, of course. But to make it amenable that anything could still happen there. And then the council can still, I mean, I think we have the information there. We could bring it up at a public works committee or something like that to see if they want to drill down a little more. But all stop signs and speed humps are both controversial when you institute them. So there's, you know, it's kind of a darned if you do, darned if you don't type situation, and they have their pros and cons. So we wouldn't do anything until the council told us to do it as far as the improvement goes. But we can certainly just keep negotiating with the property owner to see if we can come to some arrangement where they still want to pursue buying this building from us. It sounds pretty clear that the MoDOT wouldn't move forward. I mean, a non-answer is no too, because they want to know really yesterday, but just be nice to have some affirmation. And then I was just trying to, you know, here's a pool of money. If there's no direction tonight, that money will just continue to sit there at this point. We won't worry about working with that pool of money until they tell us differently.
So what we currently have on the table was, we had Ron's original motion for all 3. And so it sounds like the second item, well, then we had the motion to amend to only take up the first piece. So that would give you, if we did move forward, if council decided to do at least that, and then we can revisit, like Ron mentioned, the third piece here in a moment. But should we go ahead and see if there is any interest? We have the motion and second from council to do, to give you the MoDOT answer so that you'll have that affirmation. So if I'm remembering correctly, was that motion and second was not withdrawn, correct? That's still, I believe. I know we had a lot of changes this evening. Okay, Emily, thank you, Mrs. Donaldson. So at this time, I'm going to ask for a roll call vote to accept the Ron's motion as amended, which is only to take up the first item, which is basically telling MoDOT. Oh, Mr. Molman.
So technically, the motion on the table is Councilman Hussey's motion to amend. Mr. Fitzwater's motion has not been amended yet.
So what we'll do first is actually vote to amend the motion. I'll do a roll call for that, and then we'll take up the motion as amended. So we'll have two votes. One is just to accept the amendment, and then we'll have that discussion if we want to any further discussion on council, and then take the final vote on the motion as amended. Correct?
And Mayor, just for clarity, before we vote, did I hear correctly that in reality, staff does not actually need direction from us on any of these three items tonight in a formal way? That us doing nothing on item 1 provides the answer they need? That they feel as though they've heard from us on item 2, at least, about working on a property sale and what we're comfortable with. And item 3 is not time sensitive. Am I correct in how I heard that?
Sort of. I think Mr. Marash would prefer action from the council so that it's not just coming from the staff, not submitting that. Is that correct, Mr. Marash?
I think it's fair that the council weigh in and just tell me to tell them no, instead of me, saying, well, the council didn't, vote on anything, even though you offered it back to them. That would be fair to deal. We want to be good partners with MoDOT and give them good information.
Okay.
Would be nice to weigh in on 3, and I can certainly keep working on 2. But if I had some weigh in on 3, I think that would give some clarity to a lot of folks.
Okay. Thank you,
Madam Mayor.
Councilman Hensley?
Can I add a comment? And I don't know that this necessarily needs to be in the form of a motion. My sense tonight was that this would likely be the consensus or majority view anyway on option 2, is that in addition to continuing to pursue the sale of the property, that that the public works staff can take a final pass at the speed hump and stop sign options and try to fine tune those as much as possible to stay within the bounds of safely engineering the neighborhood and also affecting the Joshua House property parking lot as little as possible, and then bring those retuned site proposals back to us at a meeting in the near future.
That sounds similar to what you had originally in your original very, very first amendment, sort of, but just kind of more thought out now after all this discussion, kind of incorporating all of the discussion tonight. So, Mr. Molman, would that need to be, would that be helpful to have that as part 2?
Not necessarily. I think that's unless the city council tells us we want to remain the property owner of that corner lot indefinitely, we're going to work on a way to get rid of it.
And that in doing that, part of doing that is simply continuing to shape the options at that intersection.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement.
Right. Thank you very much.
So you have the direction. You don't need a council vote on what Councilman Hensley just stated, correct?
No.
Okay. So we currently have, we'll take 2 votes here. The first one is simply going to be to accept the amendment that Councilman Hussey's motion, which basically pares down that original motion of Councilman Fitzwater's to only the first MoDOT item. Correct? Councilman Fitzwater?
If I could just make one comment. I think Councilman Hensley did a better job of explaining what I was trying to do if we retool item number 2. So we've got something on paper of what we're asking staff to do. Now, again, I realize there's a motion on the table, so I'm not making that as a motion at this point. But if we took his language, redid item 2, we would at least be somewhere that council could say yay or nay.
I almost wish we could just start over with all these motions and just do 1, 2, 3. Would that be too much to ask to have everybody withdraw and just take them up separately?
That was what I was attempting to do with my amendment.
So what would we need, Ryan? Would we need Ron to withdraw the original motion and take them all 3 up?
I don't think I can with another motion on the table.
Yeah, I think that's right. I believe Mr. Hussey's would need to withdraw his, and then Mr. Fitzwater would have to withdraw his.
Well, I guess my point here is vote for the amendment and then just vote in favor. And then that takes care of one.
Okay, and then we can take up the other 2. So let's do a roll call vote to accept Councilman Hussey's motion. Mrs. Donaldson.
Fitzwater,
No.
Graham,
No.
Hensley,
Aye.
Hussey,
Aye.
Kimna,
No.
Lester,
Aye.
Schreiber,
Nay.
Vote,
Aye.
Ward,
Aye.
Wiseman.
Aye.
We have 6 ayes.
Okay, so we're now going to take up the motion as amended, which, do you want to restate what that is, Mrs. Donaldson?
Is this Councilman Hussey's?
Yes. About the taking up the MoDOT piece separately.
To take up that the city of Jefferson notifies MoDOT that the city is no longer interested in participating in the governor's transportation cost share program for the Clark interchange and the Clark-Dunklin intersection.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Graham,
Aye.
Hensley,
Aye.
Hussey,
Aye.
Kimna,
Aye.
Lester,
Aye.
Schreiber,
Aye.
Vote,
Aye.
Ward,
Aye.
Wiseman,
Aye.
Fitzwater.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Madam Mayor, I have a motion then.
Councilman Fitzwater?
I'd like to make a motion that the city of Jefferson work with Cole County to reassign the funds saved from the Clark and Dunklin project, approximately 1.5 million, to the MSP project, so that the city can fully build out all of the streets that we're contractually obligated to build at the MSP. And if I get a second, I just have a comment on that.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and second. Councilman Fitzwater?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate the comments that you made. I mean, I get the fact that we don't want to encumber dollars on something that we're not anticipating, but I mean, I think we have set wheels in motion, and Mr. Melman spoke to that a little bit, and this just gives us an opportunity to use some dollars that isn't competing against anything that at least that we know of at this time. If we throw it back on the table and it does get moved someplace, we're still going to have to go back in the next discussion period. And we are in the process, as we know, on the 22nd, coming together to start looking at items for the next sales tax. The county has come up with ideas for sales tax H, and this just gives us an opportunity to move this project along without having to compete and go through these discussions. So I just think it makes sense. Again, it doesn't lock those dollars if the entire project doesn't move forward, but it at least gives us some assurance that if things keep going in a positive direction, that we don't have to worry about that piece of it. So I would encourage members to support the motion.
Thank you, Councilman Fitzwater. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Oh, Councilman.
I guess I would just add, if we have a meeting coming up on the 22nd of February, it seems as though that could be, if there are projects that are going to be proposed in the next sales tax, and comments have been made this evening about, what that may or may not include, and this decision tonight is not time sensitive. There's nothing telling us that we need to make that decision now. It seems to me that this decision right now could wait a few weeks and at least hear about what other projects are being discussed. Again, it doesn't say that I'm opposed to dedicating these dollars to MSP, but the formal recommendation for staff to take this action came Friday at 11 a.m. and here we are Monday evening talking about dedicating $1.5 million towards that project, when I guess I would be curious if there are other public improvement, public infrastructure projects that make sense for consideration with these dollars. And if there's not, that's fine. If staff feels like this is the best use, then that can be their recommendation. But it doesn't feel as though to me that the proper vetting necessarily has taken place for this.
Perhaps to make you feel more comfortable or council feel more comfortable with acting on that this evening is that it is an obligation that it would fulfill. So this is something that is needing to be paid for. And as I know Matt went into some detail on that. And the meeting on the 22nd will be a beginning of a discussion for the next cycle. So this is something that we will still have discussion for some of those future items that would be voted on in August. So that's why I think Mr. Marash would prefer a decision sooner to keep that moving forward.
I would counter that to say when that obligation was made for these funds for this project, for MSP to meet that commitment, it was probably under the assumption that those dollars would be pulled out of the next sales tax to do so. And so I just feel like with the decision and the conversation about the roundabout, and the decision was made to not proceed with the roundabout, that I would have thought we may have given more thought to other areas, and maybe we'll still end up back and say it's MSP, but I don't understand the urgency tonight to make that decision.
Madam Mayor.
Councilman Hensley?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate Councilman Hussey's comments, and I've taken those to heart. And speaking of other public works projects, my objection to the roundabout for the last several, or one of my objections for the last several months, was the glaring lack of public works dollars in the form of stormwater improvements that affected a couple neighborhoods just down the hill from this intersection. So I think Councilman Hussey's right ultimately that at this point dedicate all of these dollars to a particular enormous project in town without going through the other list of worthy potential projects, particularly where there's no real deadline at this moment to do so, is not the best course tonight. Thank you.
Further council discussion, deliberation on the motion?
I've got a comment, Madam Mayor.
Councilman Fitzwater?
If we could just have Mr. Melman or Mr. Marash identify exactly what those dollars can be used for, because my understanding is they cannot be used for stormwater and some of those projects. So, I would hate for the issue to get clouded that we have some potential there, because my understanding was that it had to be used for road improvement type issues.
The county portion of the tax is a road and bridge sales tax, and the cities may have some more flexibility. But what has happened in the past, and with this sales tax, there's always some agreement and kind of broad categories with the county that those would be spent on certain areas or things, and so trying to think of that commitment along with other things, it seemed the best use to us to go ahead and fulfill the MSP commitment.
I have a question, Mayor. Can these funds be divided? I mean, do they have to be $1.5 million allocated to the MSP? Can the funds be divided and used for some of these stormwater issues that happened less than a year ago, or whatever. Is it all or nothing at this point?
Well, I know. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, it's certainly hard to explain. I suppose anything could happen, but we always even out the sales tax as we go on these big projects. So because the city's typically the lead, we spend like city dollars first on design or property acquisitions, all those things. And then when we do the construction contract, the county essentially catches up to the half point. And so we've spent city dollars thus far. So I think most of those dollars left are really county dollars at this point, that from that road and bridge money. So they've always been very particular about that. But
any other questions, discussion? And I would still prefer that this would be voted on this evening to move that forward. I think that it does fulfill our obligation and gives staff the clear direction, since we just received the EDA grant and you're moving forward with that. I think there's some economies of scale to be working on that potentially all together, and also the economic dollars and the growth that would come from this investment. It's something that certainly would definitely impact the east side as well. And I think it's important keeping it there on the east side, since that's what the original area was. But this would also include some economic development and growth along with that. So I think it would make sense to go ahead and give that direction at this time, and definitely not a new discussion or new project at all, and an obligation that we do know about. So I would encourage that. Any other questions or discussion?
I would want, just to build off of what you just said, Mayor, I don't want my opposition to this tonight to be misconstrued that I'm opposed to the project at MSP or dedicating dollars to that project. It's simply that I don't think that this decision needs to be made this evening, and it's worthy of conversation in a broader sense, especially since we have a meeting coming up in 3 weeks to discuss the next sales tax and those projects.
Thank you. And any other comments or questions? Councilwoman Ward?
I tend to agree with Council Member Hussey on this. We don't know. There are so many projects that are worthy, that need attention. We have a bridge out on Ohio Street, and there aren't a lot of residents on that street, but those residents feel like they have been left behind, they've been forgotten. And just, I mean, I support MSP redevelopment, I really do. But to use this money for a project when we have other projects, I don't think that's being a good public servant right now. And instead of us voting on this tonight and it failing, I think we need to hold off and see exactly. I mean, we know county commissioners are in support of this project and they will go in it with us, but what other projects will they do? And you know what, if they don't, we're just going to have to bite the bullet and help some of the citizens here that don't have access to their homes. And I mean, I understand flooding, the flooding issues apparently can't be used for this, but bridges and streets, those are areas that impact citizens daily. And again, I mean, I know I've had discussions with you, Madam Mayor, about this area, and I am very committed to this area, but you know, I think our charge as public servants is for the safety and the wellness of our citizens, and on a daily basis, that's our streets and our bridges. So that's just my thoughts on it.
And I do want to reiterate too that this is obligation that we do need to fulfill to the state, to this property. So it's not like this funds that these are going to go away. And I know it's the timing that we're talking about, but our obligation is our obligation. So I think that it's a little bit of a disservice even to the public to think about, well, what else are we going to use this on when we know that we do need to use it on this, and we have this opportunity. And even when we did the original roundabout cost share, we pulled money from MSP onto this project. So I think it sends a little bit of a wrong message that as if this money would be available for that when we do have that obligation that's very clearly already needed. So I know I see the intent to maybe wait, but I also think that it's important to solidify that obligation that we have with the state on this property. And this seems like the perfect time to do that. So I think that that's very important as well. Unless, I mean, I'm making sure I'm understanding that correctly, Mr. Maresh.
Yeah, I mean, that was the intent, just to get some direction, and this is an obligation. So and I think it also would give me personally some clarity on what options you'd like to hear on the next sales tax. I mean, I thought that was the direction of the 22nd meeting. We're talking about the next sales tax. And so if this one's off the table, then that's a different list we would present. If this one's not on the table and something else is, then we'd probably include MSP money to fulfill that obligation in the next sales tax. I mean, that would be our recommendation from my point of view.
Right. Any further discussion? David, Councilman Kimna?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate kind of what you said, Mayor, and what Ron has said too about using these funds for MSP. I think we already have an obligation to move forward with that. We've pulled money from that to do this roundabout, and now we're not doing it. So I think it's only fair to put money back into the MSP project. So I get it that we have other projects, and that is what the next meeting is for. But I just think it's only right to put money back towards the MSP project that we took money away from for this roundabout. So,
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Councilman Hensley?
This money was pulled from the MSP project?
I mentioned for the two, when we were going to do the cost share, that some of that was pulled over to that project.
How much of that?
Mr. Maresh?
So this money that we're talking about was geared towards Clark in general, but to fulfill the entire Clark bigger project of 3 roundabouts, we were going to take some money. The council agreed, and even the county agreed, we would pull some of that MSP money, the city share of the MSP money, over and do these roundabouts. So that since that's no longer the case, that money's restored, and what to do with this basically leftover 1.5 million is the question.
How much was taken from MSP?
It seems like I want to say 600,000, or either 4 or 600, something like that.
It's 400,000, and if you recall from the details of the EDA grant, that is why the city-county match out of that joint sales tax fund is $1 million from the county, 600,000 from the city.
Okay, so 400 out of 1.5 million, all 1.5 million of that is still going to be there in a month, or 6 weeks, or 8 weeks, right? I really don't understand the fear of having a fuller, more informed conversation about the infrastructure needs in this town before throwing all 1.5 million into MSP. And again, I'm in the same boat as Councilman Hussey. This is not an indication that I'm not going to vote in favor of it after we have that discussion. But if 400 to try to base a $1.5 million transfer on a $400,000 reassignment without any further discussion, I don't get it. Thanks.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Hensley?
This is on part 3, right? The $1.5 million commitment?
Right. Yes.
Nay.
Hussey,
Nay.
Kimna,
Aye.
Lester,
Aye.
Schreiber,
Aye.
Vote,
Aye.
Ward,
Aye.
Wiseman,
No.
Fitzwater,
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
7 ayes.
All right, motion passes.
Madam Mayor,
Hensley?
thank you. I move that item number 2 from Councilman Fitzwater's original bill be amended to instruct staff to please continue working towards the sale of the city-owned property at the intersection of Clark and Dunklin, and in doing so, continue reworking the plans for stop signs and stop sign or speed hump to control traffic at that intersection to reduce as much as possible the impact on parking at that corner lot, while also maintaining the safety of the intersection.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Emily, did you get all of that? You need anything repeated from Councilman Hensley?
I think I got it.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Hussey,
Aye.
Kimna,
Aye.
Lester,
Aye.
Schreiber,
Aye.
Vote,
Aye.
Ward,
Aye.
Wiseman,
Aye.
Fitzwater,
Aye.
Graham,
Aye.
Hensley.
Aye.
Motion passes. And, appreciate that last motion, Councilman Hensley, and council's full support of it. I believe that would give Mr. Marash the guidance he needs. Correct, Mr. Marash? Okay, wonderful. And thank you to the Hendricks for being on this long discussion. Why don't we take a 5-minute break and reconvene here and take up the rest of the agenda?
Okay.
Okay, be back in 5 minutes. Thank you. Move on the agenda. Item 8, announcements by mayor, council, and staff. We have 4 standing committees, and we meet at those council committees are shown on jeffersoncitymod.gov, the calendar. So we'll go through our 4 standing committees and ask if there are any upcoming reports or meetings. We'll start with number 1, administration. Councilwoman Wiseman.
Thank you, Mayor. We have nothing to report at this time.
Item 2, finance, Councilman Hensley.
No update. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Graham, public safety.
No update, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Hussey, public works and planning.
Thank you, Mayor. Just that we have a meeting on Thursday, February 11th at 7:30 a.m.
Thank you. Any questions on the committees? Okay. And I have a few announcements this evening. Wanted to start by recognizing that this is the beginning of Black History Month and taking a moment to reflect on that and to celebrate that. I know there are a lot of local events that go on this month, and just want to encourage everyone to take note of that, as today is February 1st as we kick off Black History Month. Also wanted to announce the Optimist Club, that I presented a proclamation to the Optimist Club last week, and that the first Thursday of every February is Optimist Day. So in Jefferson City, we will celebrate Optimist Day on Thursday, February 4th. Also, Council for Drug-Free Youth is having their annual meeting on Thursday, January 11th at 5:30 p.m. via Zoom. So they have invited the City Council to attend that virtually, and I'm sure the public, they would welcome them as well. We have a City Council work session on Monday, February 22nd at 5:30 p.m. The discussion will be about our upcoming sales tax renewal, which is in August of 21. And I also wanted to announce that from the News Tribune that our city beat reporter, Emily Cole, who has been reporting on us for a while, she will be leaving her position at News Tribune. So she was supposed to be reporting on it this evening, and I believe something came up and she was not able to cover tonight's meeting. But I still want to take a moment and thank her. She's been a wonderful reporter, and always appreciate her fair reporting that she's been doing for City Council. We will miss her in that position. So wanted to collectively as a council take a moment to thank Emily. Since she couldn't be here tonight as we originally thought she would, maybe she could pop into a future meeting and we could give her a thank you that way. Those are my announcements. My last one, of course, is Go Chiefs. We look forward to the big weekend and Go Chiefs. Are there any other announcements this evening? Okay, then we'll go on to item 9. The Lincoln University Student Representative Update, and we have Stacy Landis on the line.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to reiterate, Go Chiefs, as a Kansas City native. So Go Chiefs, hopefully win a Super Bowl. As far as Lincoln University, as far as last meeting, January 19th, we are back active as a full campus, classes, events. And as far as Black History Month on the HBCU, we have lots of events coming up virtually. That way all students are safe, movie nights, trivia, information, all types of things. So Lincoln is definitely back in full effect, and we are glad to be back. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Landis. Glad to have you back, and good luck with this upcoming semester. Item 10, presentations from the gallery on specific bills or resolutions. Mrs. Donaldson, is there anyone signed up?
No.
Okay, and is there anyone on the line that would like to speak to any specific bill or resolution? Okay, seeing none, we'll go on to item 11, consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Or all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 12, bills introduced, 2020-60.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute a development agreement with Catholic Charities.
Mr. Marash.
Thank you, Mayor. As clerk indicated, development agreement with Catholic Charities. They're developing a site over on 1200 Linden Drive, a property they recently acquired. They during the site development process, it was noted that their parking lot expansion would place considerable fill over a older sanitary sewer main. Typically, we'd ask the developers to relocate that. In this case, it just had to be raised. It was fairly straightforward. They requested that the city participate in that as they felt it wasn't their responsibility. That was brought before the Public Works and Planning Committee, who recommended approval to the council. The staff did have a negative recommendation on it at the time, but based on the recommendation from the committee, we're moving it forward for the full council. It's a $20,000 item, and that would be paid for out of the sanitary sewer fund. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Maresh? All right. Item 13, bills pending 2020-59. Oh, Mrs. Dodson, you're on mute.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute an agreement with Safety Vision LLC in the amount of $62,681.79 for the replacement of transit bus cameras.
Mr. Maresh.
The clerk, thank you. The clerk indicated much of the pertinent information. Only that I could add is that of the little over $62,000 price tag, 80% of that would be funded through a grant from the FTA, Federal Transit Administration, which is administered through MoDOT. And that 80% would total just over $50,000. So the local share, our share, $12,536.35 would come from the half-cent sales tax related to transit items. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Is there any questions or deliberation from council? Roll call, please.
Kibna?
Aye.
Lester?
Aye.
Schreiber?
Aye.
Vogt?
Aye.
Ward?
Aye.
Wiseman?
Aye.
Fitzwater?
Aye.
Graham?
Aye.
Hensley?
Aye.
Hussey?
Aye.
Bill passes. Item 14, nothing on the informal. Resolution 2020-31.
A resolution extending an emergency declaration and further proclamations thereunder until March 1st, 2021.
Mr. Molman.
Thank you. This resolution extends the emergency declaration and 4 emergency proclamations. These 4 emergency proclamations have all been in place. Some since the beginning of the pandemic in March, and one as recently as September. But this is the same package that's been approved, I believe, at the last 3 meetings, extending it for another 30 days per the city code.
Thank you. Is there any, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I have a comment.
Councilman Fitzwater?
Thank you. And I'll preface it by saying I appreciate all the work that you've done in this community to help try to work with Cole County, and Christy and Chelsea and the team there has done an amazing job for our community of keeping our community healthy. And I think that's evident by the fact that our numbers continue to drop in the hospital. Unlike the rest of the state, which the vaccine rollout has been less than optimal, we've done an amazing job in this community. So I think we're doing our job to protect the community. And again, your leadership has helped tremendously. My concern is 2 things. One, items like 7A. I don't like having these discussions staring at a television screen or my iPad screen. You know, I would like for council to get back in the chamber. I understand the need for masking. I did not support it because I thought there were loopholes in it, but yeah, I mean the majority won, and you know, I'm more than happy to put a mask on and you know, encourage other people to come in there. I think the social distancing. You know, I tried to look through these, and rather than try to speak against one of them, what I'd try to encourage is that we look at letter D, number 2, to see if there isn't an opportunity, and I realize that is at your discretion, to bring the council and city committees back to live meetings as quickly as possible. I mean, I think we owe it to the citizens of this community to have the very tough discussions, and I appreciate everybody that had the tough discussions. I've been on both sides of those kind of votes. And I appreciate the opportunity to continue to allow those that don't think they want to come into an open meeting to continue to participate by electronics. And I think that's appropriate. But I would like to see us begin to move council and our committees back to live meetings safely, utilizing the provisions that have been put in place. But I think we owe it to this community. That the second piece that concerns me is we were to the point where we had quite a few people showing up at council meetings pre-COVID. It dwindled through the summer as we were kind of wrestling, what does this thing look like? But we get very few comments from the public now, even electronically, when we're all electronic. So keeping that option for people that prefer to come in and make a live presentation. So my request is that you seriously look at item number 2 to see if there's not opportunities to at least get this council back in the chambers. I realize it adds a little bit to staff that has to clean afterwards, but I think we owe it to this community to meet. And, you know, I would really like to see the committees in that bunch also. The commissions, I mean, although their work is very important, and, you know, sometimes maybe they require more input from the community than the committees at times. But, you know, I'd leave that to your discretion. I'm not arguing on their behalf. But our 4 committees in council, I think we owe it to the voters to be together, and that's just my request. I'm going to support what is here, but I would ask that you would seriously take that under consideration.
I agree.
Thank you for those comments, Councilman Fitzwater. And this emergency proclamation extension that we've been doing every 30 days will apply to the month of February. So we will be meeting again virtually February 15th. And we will continue to evaluate our cases. I'm very thankful to see that our cases have been on the decrease. And I think that is in part to the fact that a lot of people are doing things as virtual as possible, even though it's not the preferred method. Anytime we can keep distance, I know the number one thing is really keeping distance. So I appreciate council keeping their distance and doing this option. And what I am also thankful for is that we're able to have that public engagement and input, that people can still either call in, so they don't even need a smartphone. They can simply even call and be part of our meeting, or they can engage by video as well. So I think that's also been helpful, and we want to definitely keep the safest methods. So I think what we'll do is monitor our cases, and as we continue, like I mentioned, we have our weekly meetings with our hospital and healthcare administration, and I appreciate being that example for the community. I know that I'm a part of several civic groups, and they're making the decisions should they start to convene and get back together. And I think certainly any method that can keep distance right now is still preferred. And the vaccinations give us hope, and that's really wonderful. But it will definitely take time. But we want to keep those cases on the decrease as much as possible. So appreciate us taking every effort to do that, and appreciate the community's patience as we meet virtually, and having this good option that they can still participate as well, and council and staff's patience. So we'll keep those precautions, but we'll consider that. And so at least for this month, this resolution will be in full effect for February at least, and we'll reevaluate at the end of February. Any other comments?
Yeah, if I could comment, even with this in place, you still have some options under item 2. I'm just saying, if you would consider council itself, even leaving this in place, there's some options for the mayor to opt out at your discretion.
Yes. Well, I appreciate that feedback. And any other discussion or comments? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Lester,
Aye.
Schreiber,
Aye.
Vogt, Vogt,
Aye, sorry. Aye.
Ward,
Aye.
Wiseman,
Aye.
Fitzwater,
Aye.
Graham, Hensley,
Aye.
Hussey,
Aye.
Kimna.
Aye.
Resolution passes. Resolution 2020-32.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, authorizing application for the Greenway Extension Project through a recreational trails program grant.
Mr. Sanders.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Recreational Trails Grant is funded by the Federal Highway Administration and administered through the Missouri Department of Natural Resources. Next slide, please. And Public Works and Parks and PPS sat together once this grant was announced, and we came up with a project that meets the objectives of both the Community Development Block Grant Program and the Recreational Trails Program, and determined that a connector between the existing greenway and bike lanes that are striped between the Dunklin Trailhead and what's going on up on Capitol Avenue in terms of the bike lanes going along Capitol Avenue, that a connector, as identified in the Greenway Plan, would be an ideal project. Next slide, please. More details on it. Basically, it would go from Jackson Street, where McCarty is, up to Capitol Avenue. What you see in red would be the new connector. It would be a project that is a 10-foot, if you will, a sidewalk, and some curb and gutter repairs, a nice crosswalk like you see in downtown up on High Street, at High Street and up to Jackson, and of course ADA compliant all the way. This project would be a $160,000 grant through the application, and then also we'd be matching it with Community Development Block Grant Program funds. And with that, I would be glad to answer any questions. The due date for this is February 17th, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions or a motion to approve?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Any further discussion on the resolution? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Schreiber,
Aye.
Vogt,
Aye.
Ward,
Aye.
Wiseman,
Aye.
Fitzwater,
Aye.
Graham, Hensley,
Aye.
Hussey,
Aye.
Kimna,
Aye.
Lester.
Aye.
Resolution passes. Item 16, presentations from the gallery on other topics. Emily, anyone signed up? Okay, is there anyone on the line that would like to speak under that item? Seeing none. Item 18, any new business? 19, we don't need the closed session this evening as far as I know. Item 20, any unfinished business? And 21, is there a motion to adjourn?
Madam Mayor, I move to adjourn.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 All right, we are adjourned. Everyone have a great evening. Thank you.